Tonight, in some neutral ground, possibly Switzerland, where Alvin and the Chipmunks and Muse are both well loved, the two popular bands are performing at the same time due to some scheduling issues. However, all is not well, as two of the more showboating members of each band, Alvin and Nico, catch wind of the rival performances and drag along their reluctant bandmates to help sabotage their rivals. Who knows how this will go down? Hopefully well, eventually, but that's now started to go out the window. Will there be fighting? Will stage equipment hurt any of them? And ultimately, who can succeed in such a goal and have a successful show afterwards?
Hello, I am Max, and I must say that the Chipmunks have this in the bag. That's a hint for later. First things first, I want to establish something that should be abundantly clear to anyone who views this match. The Muse are a dime a dozen pop group, and while yes, their music is good, and I get why people would want to see them, they're competing against actual chipmunks. Tell me what you'd rather go see. Some girls singing pop songs, or hyper-intelligent animals that have somehow learned how to sing and dance. That's a spectacle far above just a song. There are hundreds of bands just like Muse, to the point that they aren't really special anymore. To my knowledge, there is no music group with talking chipmunks, which should, in my opinion, draw a larger audience. Also, Alvin and the Chipmunks have a much larger fan base. Sure, their image may have been tainted a bit by their live-action movies, but their impact on pop culture is still relevant. I mean, these guys got their own place on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, in real life. They're still some of the most recognized and beloved cartoon characters of all time. I dare you to find anyone who hasn't heard of Alvin and the Chipmunks. You can't. In the context of their universe even, they have plush dolls that speak in many different languages, proving that they're a phenomenon all across the globe. The Muse, meanwhile, are a Japanese thing mostly. I mean, they're school idols, something that only exists in Japan. Sure, they went to America in the movie and became popular, but we have no idea if they'll be remembered in America in the coming years. We know for a fact that Alvin and the Chipmunks stick. Also, if we're going to look at them as bands, Alvin and the Chipmunks have a much stronger bond than Muse. Hanukkah, Umi, and Katori have known each other since they were kids, sure, but the other members of Love Live they had just gotten to know when they started Muse, and Muse only wound up lasting like a year or so. Alvin and the Chipmunks have known each other for their entire lives, and they've never split up before. Speaking of their disbanding, since the Love Live crew would indeed be coming back from retirement for this, I have to imagine they've gotten a bit rusty and can't perform at their peak anymore. The Chipmunks don't have this problem, seeing as how they've never broken up, and have kept fresh over the years. When it comes to sabotaging the other team, I believe Alvin and the Chipmunks are the only ones likely to actually do this. The Love Live girls are all sweethearts who wouldn't agree to do anything to sabotage the other team. Nico might consider it, but she's honestly a lot more mature than Alvin, so I believe if anyone's going to sabotage something, Alvin will at least be the first to do so, and probably the most successful at it. Nico's schemes are, at best, her wearing sunglasses while she stalks people. Alvin, meanwhile, often comes up with harebrained schemes that cause mischief, and while you may think that Simon and Theodore wouldn't allow Alvin to cheat, that wouldn't stop him from just going behind their backs to sneakily cheat. I think Nico is not only too prideful for that, but she'd probably get convinced by Muse to not sabotage anything. They'd have a big dramatic talk to Nico about it, and then they'd guilt her into stopping any scheme she had planned. As for how Alvin would cheat, I suppose he could swap out Nozomi's future-telling cards with a warning that their show was destined to end in disaster. Nozomi seems to hold her cards in high regard, so if they warned her not to perform after so long of their band being disbanded, she might just decide to leave. And as we all know, it isn't Muse unless it's all 9 of them, so if one of them leaves, they all leave and their concert is cancelled, allowing Alvin and the Chipmunks to go on unopposed. Alvin may feel bad for ruining Muse's night for a bit, and Dave may reprimand him, but he'd still wind up winning the night, even if he learns a very valuable lesson afterwards. Oh! I almost forgot! Alvin could just get Uncle Ian to bring those girls right to him, and then he'll kidnap the Muse girls with a giant bag, and send them off to Mexico or something so they can't perform. Ha-ha!
Hi there, I'm Ribbit, and I must say, you make quite a few strong arguments for the Chipmunks. But I have a few reasons of my own as to why Muse should pull through. While yes, it is indeed true that Alvin, Simon, and Theodore are all walking, talking animals, in their universe, that novelty is kind of the norm at this point. There's literally another chipmunk band with the exact same shtick as them. Everything new is interesting for a while, but the novelty of anthropomorphic animals isn't a trump card anymore, at least in a world where Alvin and the gang have been at it for so long. And don't say that people aren't going to know who Alvin and the Chipmunks are, because in that case, their fame wouldn't even be able to play into it. Next, you talk about Muse like they have nothing to offer when compared to other idol groups. And no one really knows them outside of Japan, which, to be fair, is kind of true if you compare their prominence in Japan to other places. But in Japan they are way more popular and loved compared to Alvin and the Chipmunks are in, say, America. To just say a few things that the Love Life franchise has in Japan. They have billboards and subways, you have arcade games everywhere. Most merch shops have entire Love Life sections, food that's themed after them. People all over Japan sport clothes related to them. Snow Halation, you know that song that's a massive meme to us? That plays in stores. When was the last time you heard that weird hula hoop song that David came up with while talking to himself in bed like some psychopath, played at your local Tesco? Exactly. And I'm sure all the kids are sporting Simon hoodies around town.
There's a shrine, where instead of doing anything a normal human being would actually do at a shrine, you can buy a prayer board that's sporting Nozomi's face. Heck, in Japan, the town that Love Live's second series takes place in is basically themed around it at this point. I get that their prominence in Japan might seem irrelevant, but you underestimate how diehard these people can be. There's vehicles driving around Japan with Muse on them, several years after the show was out. So I believe that if Muse got back together for another show, they'd be able to get back into shape and would have a massive audience. Let me put it like this, Muse split up years ago, yet their franchise is still everywhere, with their franchise basically holding the mascots to entire towns. Their fame has only gotten bigger, so imagine if they come back after so long of being apart. Actually, you don't really need to imagine. If they're so rusty, then why are they returning with a new single this year? Yeah, this was very coincidentally announced in mid-August. So Muse are actually more relevant than ever, no matter where they do a new concert. It's gonna be huge. Meanwhile, the Chipmunks are bad, like pogs. They've faded away. Sure, their films made bank, but most people who grew up with them, like you and me, know that they're pretty crap. I'm yet to meet anyone who knows Alvin and the Chipmunks from the animated series, who's quite as diehard as some of Muse fans can be. So I don't think they'd fly to another country to see them. I would also like to point out that Muse are actually really popular in other countries. Yes, more people know Alvin and the Chipmunks, but I'd go as far as to say more people love Muse. You go to any anime convention or store, even here in the UK, and you'll have very little chance of seeing absolutely nothing Love Life related. The place I'd expect to find something Alvin and the Chipmunks related is in the reduced bin on the DVD aisle, or on the small shelf of a charity shop in the toy section, sporting the McDonald's logo on their anus. I have a few more points, but I'll bring them up later. For now, your cheeky little Uncle Ian point that you snuck in at the end there. I have a few quarrels with it. Okay, first of all, this is Muse vs. Alvin's band, not Muse vs. Alvin's band and some sweaty old man. Next, Uncle Ian shows no signs of superhuman physicality. Meanwhile, Muse have actually got superhuman feats, and there are 9 of them. They've just beat the shit out of him. Ian even being there implies it's the movie versions, that are just regular chipmunks. The Love Live cast are a lot smarter and bigger than the chipmunks, as far as the movie is concerned. Also, why the heck would they fall for this trickery? If some old man came up to them and was like, "Wanna live in my mansion and play with my toys there?" why would they accept it? Some of them are 18! Why would they fall for a trap that involves a bag? And even if they did, why don't they just break it? Also, in the scene where Uncle Ian says, "Bring them girls right to me," it was in the context of the Chipettes being on a drone, which he was controlling. But oddly enough, 9 around 50-kilogram girls would not fit on one drone, and would be a little bit too heavy for it to fly with. Why would they be worrying about hanging out with a man when without a doubt, they'd be training like crazy? You know how focused the Muse can get. If anything, I feel like to the Muse, Uncle Ian would just come across as a stranger danger situation. Also, why would he even help them? They've screwed him over time and time again. Ian is not going to do shit if Alvin and the gang come up to him and ask,
"Hey Ian, can you kidnap 9 grown women and potentially get arrested so our concert can do a little bit better? Please?"
"Okay, I'm done."
Well, you have 1 or 2 good points about Uncle Ian. Maybe even 3? But I digress. Uncle Ian reformed in the 3rd movie. He and the Chipmunks are chill now. He'd gladly assist in the kidnapping of 9 women, surely. Anyways, onto my more serious argument here. I suppose if we're taking this into the context of their actual universe and not real life, I'd say that thoroughly debunks your claims that the Chipmunks are a fad, since that's only in our world. In the Chipmunks world, they're hugely popular all around the globe, and people sell tons and tons of merch in their world, similar to how Muse sells a bunch of merch in the real world. Sure, Muse holds concerts in the real world, and ultimately they're far more relevant today in our real world, but if we're not to be in the real world, none of these things matter anymore. I'd say in the context of their universes, they're equally popular, with merch being sold a ton in the cartoons and stuff. Also, in the cartoon, the movies never happened, thank God, and their reputation was never tarnished. So, with both sides equally popular, and admittedly the chipmunks being animals no longer being a big deal, how will my chipmunks manage a victory? Well, of course it has to be either through sabotage, or by maxing up their appeal, both of which I think are likely for these free rodents. If the chipmunks need to make their show more appealing, they have a few ways to do so. One, they're actually buddy-buddy with the Frankenstein's monster as of Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein, so I'm sure he'd be glad to come to their show, maybe shred a little bit on the guitar? Though I bet him showing up at all would be enough to bring in an audience, since he's a living dead man. If that fails, Alvin and the Chipmunks can go all Bill and Ted on this bitch and use Simon's time machine to bring out historical figures. Yes, Simon has a damn time machine. Did I mention he's the smartest one here? A super genius who invented the time machine is on our side. As for any other use for the time machine, I suppose if they wanted to end this fight more passively, they could warn Muse ahead of time that their shows will accidentally play at the same time, and give them a chance to change their date. That way, Alvin and the Chipmunks get to play their concert unopposed, winning our scenario, but ruining nobody's show in the process. But, if we really do need to sabotage this thing, I still argue that Alvin is more mischievous than Nico, and in fact, has more materials to mess with Muse. Again, they have time travel on their side here. What if Alvin stops Muse from ever meeting to begin with? What if he makes sure that Katori gets on that plane and leaves Muse before Hanukkah can convince her to come back? If, and I do say if, it turns into a direct physical confrontation. Somehow. I guess that Muse are stronger via size, but Alvin and the Chipmunks are quick little buggers. And, if I recall correctly, in the dreaded live-action movies, Alvin parodied the Matrix by moving so fast he created after images. He's untouchable! Also, I don't know, maybe get Frankenstein to fight off the Muse? He's rather strong. Anyways, sabotage is easily something Alvin is capable of pulling off. And since, as I argued, Muse wouldn't even go along with the sabotage to begin with no matter what Nico says, this will just make things even easier for Alvin. Plus, if Alvin got Simon on board with his whole sabotage thing, I find it hard to believe that anyone on Muse could outsmart a genius who's invented time travel. So, even if the Muse are more relevant, most people would rather go see the Alvin and the Chipmunks band over nothing, and if all goes well, the Muse won't be performing at all.
Frankenstein's monster and Abe Lincoln showing up is great and all, but if you're gonna say that this takes place in-universe, then no one is actually gonna believe that they're the real deal. The Love Life world is exactly like ours. No one is gonna see Frankenstein's monster on the poster and go, wow, I have to see that! Or if they see Hitler on the poster, well then they're just gonna outright walk away at high speeds. You know what would get fans flooding in though? A crossover between Muse and Aqua, an absolutely massive idol group, literally started because of Muse, and their fan bases would be relatively similar. So I think that it would be pretty easy to get them on board. They'd likely be honoured to work with them. Aqua even travelled across the country to see Muse's school. Plus, those who follow both bands over in Japan are for sure gonna fly over to see it now. Next, Alvin's sabotage argument. I can actually agree with a lot of it. Muse are older and more mature than Alvin, but I don't think they're above self-defense. If a talking chipmunk tries to sabotage their concert, Muse, I think, will have what it takes to get rid of the little bugger. They were one time calculated to be street level plus in strength. They could hit you with more force than a shotgun, essentially. Corey smacks Alvin once and he's fucking dead. A slab of meat in the backstage that they shall feast on for dinner. Plus, their speed was calculated to be superhuman. Pretty similar to a cheetah. They're slower than Alvin. But you need to remember that it's just Alvin. There's 9 Muse. Speed isn't too useful for somebody who's outnumbered so much. Next, your time machine argument. I can see where you're coming from, but Muse have a complicated history. Nozomi and Ellie have known each other for years. Hanukkah, Umi, and Kaori have all known each other since they were little, and Rin and Hayano have also been friends for a while. Alvin is really going to need to know his stuff when it comes to Muse to know exactly where to be, and that's assuming that that information is readily available to him. And in all honesty, I don't think Simon would let him. Simon's a nice boy. He wouldn't want Alvin to ruin a group of girls' relationships. In fact, Nozomi and Ellie, along with Maki and Nico, have had implications of romantic interest in the main series, and especially in other media. Alvin would literally be ending the, well, love lives of some people. Alvin can be a dick, but I like to think he's above that. Also, if he gets Frankenstein to do it, either Muse can defend themselves, which I believe they could, considering that there could be up to 18 of them if Aqua is indeed there. Considering Hanukkah being skilled in martial arts, and Umi being a skilled archer for example, I think they have a chance at overpowering the guy through numbers and smarts. Or, Muse all get fucking murdered, and Alvin would be the prime suspect. And well, how are they going to do a concert when Alvin's on Alcatraz Island? On top of this, Love Live has an app with over 30 million users. The app could easily advertise their concert and get an even bigger group of fans coming in, as the app is actually even more popular than the anime, actually being what the anime was based off. So with all this considered, I see Muse prevailing being the most likely outcome.
Jesus. Did you say they were gonna eat Alvin?
Yes, and they'll find him fucking delicious.
Well, those were our arguments. Now it's your turn. Leave your predictions on how this whole mess would go down. Be funny, be creative, and try not to think of this as an actual fight. I mean, it sort of is one, but it's not a physical confrontation, you know?
Don't forget to vote in the poll below, but obviously that isn't going to determine who wins the next time. We put more value in comments.
With that, we give you this little hint towards what's next on Galaxy Grudge Match. I guess death really looms above our next one. Join us next time for part 2, where we determine if the Chipmunks can meet those nice ladies here.